Hello, happy Wednesday. My name is Beverly Hosford, and I've got my friend Erin Nitschke here with me. We are live for the National Federation of Professional Trainers on Facebook, and I'm going to just go ahead and send a quick tweet out there to let people know that we're live, so just give me a second. If you're on already, why don't you say hello, tell us where you're from. I am from Montana, and Erin, why don't you give us the Wyoming update for the day?
The Wyoming update. So yesterday it was 70 degrees and it's December. I'm like,
Well, hang on a second. What?
Yeah. And it's gorgeous outside right now. I mean, sun is shining. There's zero wind.
Jealous.
It's a little weird. I'm a little freaked out that like maybe in another few days, it's just going to dump 6 feet of snow. Like there's a clog somewhere in the sky and it's just going to like blanket our entire state. I don't know, but it's a little bizarre that it was 70 degrees yesterday.
Oh, I think we're all feeling a little jealous and cold right now.
Yeah, wow. Well,
let us know what the temperature is where you are. I see we've got a bunch of people watching. Today we're going to talk about happy hormones, which means there's 4 main hormones we want to talk about today. We're going to talk about endorphins, serotonin, dopamine, and oxytocin. And we're also going to chat a little bit about we're going to talk about how to boost them, but we're also going to talk about a way to boost them indirectly, which is kind of a sneaky thing that we'll tell you all about in a little bit. And then we're also going to talk about how you, as a practitioner, whether you're a personal trainer, Pilates instructor, yoga, sleep coach, whatever you are, we're going to talk about how you can get yourself motivated since the new year is coming here and people are going to be ready to go. And we're also going to talk about how you can get your clients motivated. And we're going to use these hormones as our foundation, but we're also going to talk about some bigger concepts. So hang on and say hello. Tell us what the temp is where you are. And I'm going to have Erin get started here. We're going to talk a little bit about what these hormones are that I just rattled off.
Right. So there's a ton to these hormones. So we won't spend the entire show giving you all of the ins and outs of it. But essentially, these hormones, they function in things like mood and anxiety and depression and those types of things, reward centers, the painkillers. So there's a lot to them. So serotonin probably being one that we've heard about the most. It is a neurotransmitter. It's part of a catecholamine group, and as is dopamine. And it is, this one's for Angie, if Angie's watching, because we had a while ago talked about tryptophan being the turkey toxin.
Right.
So serotonin is derived from tryptophan. And so that's one reason why when you are munching down on your Thanksgiving or Christmas Day turkey, you're feeling a little good. That serotonin is being produced from tryptophan. But it's a neurotransmitter, meaning that it just kind of sends, it's a chemical messenger, basically. It's going to transfer a message from one area of the brain to another. And although serotonin has that function, some 90% or something like that is located in your gut. So that's really interesting, I think. And for so long, we've always heard this comment about the stomach being the second brain. It's kind of true. It's not just kind of true, it is true. 90% of your serotonin is located there. And so we see, that's why one reason we see when people are suffering from anxiety or depression or some other imbalance, they oftentimes have digestive stress. You know, they get diarrhea or they feel like they're nauseous or something like that. It's because of those, it's because serotonin is located in that region. So that kind of makes a connection there, something to understand with clients. If you've got a client that's got some, depression and anxiety, and they're also suffering from, I've got this GI distress, I'm constantly nauseated, or I'm this or I'm that. Now, that doesn't mean that that's 100% what their deal is. They could have something completely different, but just keep in mind that like your stomach truly is your second brain. So, and then endorphins, on the other hand, while they are a neurotransmitter, they are produced in the central nervous system and the pituitary gland. So it's like that little tiny gland in your brain. And the word actually means endogenous morphine, which is kind of interesting. So endorphin, so endo, the first part of the word, meaning endogenous, which means it's produced within the body. It's not an exogenous source. And then the last part of the word is derived from morphine. So if you read anything about endorphins, it automatically talks about that group being your natural painkillers. And really, it's a survival thing as well. So you think back to like early human history, we had to survive a lot of challenges. I mean, everything from weather to predators to having no food and things like that. So endorphins it's really part of an evolutionary process as well, because they are our natural painkillers. And it allows us to persist. It allows us to go on and survive and reproduce.
That's so interesting that they don't actually like make you happier. They just suppress the pain.
Yeah. Like it basically acts on your opiate receptors in your brain. And opiates, we know, are painkillers. And so they have a natural ability to block pain and block your perception of that pain. So it allows you to survive. So they're very important. And when we see deficiencies in any of these areas, it doesn't sound like they're well understood. And like research might still be evolving in those areas. But one of the other interesting things about endorphins is they tend to surge during pregnancy. And because they are a natural painkiller, their function is to reduce discomfort and stress on the body, which I don't recall my endorphins being all that high when I was pregnant. When I read that, I'm like, okay, I'm going to go ahead and disagree with that. I don't feel, yeah, like, I'm sorry, childbirth still hurts whether or not you have a surge of endorphins or not. There's no way around it. So essentially they're there to make you feel good. You'll notice after like a certain meal or exercise or something that you derive joy from, you get that high. It's often termed an endorphin high, and there's some truth to that.
Yeah. Yeah, and we'll talk a little bit more about that with clients.
Yeah.
So we've got serotonin, endorphins. We got two more.
So oxytocin. Oh, sorry. I thought you were going to say something. So oxytocin, we see that as like a cuddle kind of hormone. Those are things that can be released in those intimate moments, and breastfeeding a child, snuggling with a child. So again, it acts on your pleasure center, which who doesn't like that, you know? And so we do see that surge, especially during pregnancy and birth of a child. Still that reward center. It's that it's not a painkiller necessarily, but it's a pleasurable kind of hormone that's released and gives you that feeling of joy. And so it affects mood.
Relaxation, calm.
It's that calm sensation, like that, you know, your stress is low and you just feel kind of at peace and at joy at that particular moment. And then dopamine, also a neurotransmitter, and is also part of the catecholamine group, just like serotonin is. It's just produced in a different area. And it is part of that reward system, that reward center. So it's also a feel-good hormone. And there are, as far as the differences go, they have a lot more similarities than they do differences. You know, they're all, as a group, they transmit messages. Your endorphins are probably the one that has the biggest difference because they, like I said, are your natural painkillers. They kind of give you that morphine-like high, really. And so that's why we like to engage in things that are more pleasurable than painful. Makes sense, right? But they're all chemical messengers. They're just produced in different areas and in response to different actions in the body or a different type of activity that you're doing. So with like exercise, we see endorphins being released, that type of thing. So they all have very similar capabilities in that they all like really affect mood. And we look at those in terms of, if somebody is suffering from depression, we look at maybe putting them on like an SSRI, which is the selective serotonin reuptake inhibitor. Then there's another class of drugs that functions with another catecholamine, which is norepinephrine. So there's this whole complex kind of mechanism of action, but at the end of the day, they're feel-good hormones. They make you happy. And who doesn't like to be happy?
well, that's why we're here today, to feel the happiness. And I thought it was interesting that, so like when we talk about trainers and like how they can, use these hormones to their advantage, I think it's endorphins that intense exercise triggers them, because intense exercise is, I don't necessarily want to say it's painful, but it's a little more taxing on the body. So then the body reduces, and when you eat spicy food too,
Yes.
endorphins are released because the body's basically trying to like bring down the pain. And then as a result of that, you get that high. So I thought that was interesting. Like that's why we talk about endorphins with exercise, and we talk about like, oh, I want the endorphins. It's like, actually you're getting the endorphins because you're kind of inducing an intense feeling or pain.
Right.
And then whereas I think it was it oxytocin? One of the other ones is released more with low intensity exercise. I'm trying to see if I've got it here. Maybe it was, I'm not really sure, but I think it's important for trainers to do a little bit of both with clients. Like and we talked about that last week with cortisol, where if you're going to do exercise, do those, that's why those intense intervals are popular. Like bring it up and then bring it down, and then bring it up and then bring it down. Like get the intensity up and then let the body recover. And so I think that that's why that's such a trend these days. But I love the idea, like, so oxytocin, like maybe you're not going to be going around hugging your clients, but I think there's great power in the high five, in the pat on the back. And we talked about that recently too. And then I love, like, with dopamine, thinking about setting goals. Like I read something about setting goals to trigger dopamine and getting people off on that like challenge. So these are all things that personal trainers definitely do. And anyone who's working with clients is, you may not always be able to share that touch with your client, but you can recommend your client go and get a massage or something like that. Because ultimately, I think if people are feeling better and they're happy, they're more motivated, and
absolutely,
they're more likely to take your advice. But I feel like there's more to it than just these feel-good hormones. There's also what we talked about a few weeks ago, which, like, we have to help people find what they enjoy for exercise, and they have to be able to figure out like what type of exercise is going to make me feel good aside from just the exercise itself, because you're not going to go out and exercise if it's not enjoyable. And I saw in our sleep group, when I posted that question this week about exercise, actually my dad commented and he said, have you ever thought about exercise as the reward? And I was like, yeah, exercise should be a reward, just like food is a reward. Like, why do we have to think of it as a negative? Exercise should be somewhat enjoyable, or you're doing it wrong for sure.
Yeah, I've always wondered that, like, why for so long it's like, oh, I have to go work out, or oh, I don't want to go be active. Like, humans like to move. We like to go and do. So where did that negative perception come from? For me, it was PE class, but I managed to get over that. But yeah, I mean, you just kind of wonder, like, why the negative context with it, because the human body is meant for movement. We are structured in such a way that movement is our power, and we need to celebrate that.
Yeah. And every person is different. Like, I know I was talking to someone recently who just hired a trainer for the first time in a while, and they got their butt kicked and they loved that. That motivated them. And so I think as a trainer, you've got to know what motivates someone. Some people want the exercise to calm them down and make them feel less stressed. Some people want that, like, that boost. They want, that maybe intense exercise. So I think it's always important to go back to the client and what their needs are. And I did want to mention that, while we're talking about like boosting motivation, which we'll talk in a minute about how to boost your own motivation, which I'm really excited about. But before we can boost motivation, I always have to think like we have to get rid of the grud, or like the crud. Like, we've got to make sure we have a good foundation. So like before you can like get that like motivation and that rush, like we've got to lower what we talked about last week, the stress hormone, cortisol, which we agreed that cortisol is not bad. It's actually very good. But if it gets too high, it can become an issue. So remembering to get sleep and to rest and recover and to like take care of yourself and homeostasis is so important before you can ever be motivated. Like, sometimes I get the most motivation after I've laid on the floor for 15 minutes and done some stretching and like breathing Like sometimes I want to keep powering through my work and like do something else and do something else. And it's like, actually, if I just take a break, then when I come back to it, I have that motivation because I brought myself back down again.
Right.
I want to remind everyone that like before we add, you know, everyone loves to feel motivated. Everyone loves to feel creative and inspired, but we have to have, our bodies need that rest, or they need to sleep and they need to step away from it. We can't be on all the time.
No, and I think for some people they certainly can be that way for a period of time, but then eventually their motivation, it's the same thing with overtraining. You can be that way. You can overthink for sure and be too into something. Guilty.
Especially if you're like me. Yeah.
Yeah, but you can. And so, and even, I mean, there's tons of research out there that shows just even taking a break during the day and going for a 5-minute walk or something like that can help you cognitively. You know, it can kind of bring a sense of clarity that maybe you were stuck writing an article and you needed to, you felt like you had writer's block, but you got up and you went for a walk and grabbed some tea and came back and you're like, oh, and it just flows. So yeah, there's some benefit to that for sure. And I feel that way in my cooldowns is when like, I'm much more relaxed and I'm much more focused and I'm not so much, my mind isn't so much on my stretching or anything like that. It's more on the relaxation, but then also some of my best ideas that I get are during a time when I've gotten my workout done and I've torched some calories and I'm all sweaty and I'm like, okay, I'm ready to tackle this day. I'm ready to bang out these 3 articles or whatever. And I'll start writing them in my head before I ever get to sit down to work.
I love that. I always love how you honor that cool down because it's so easy to skip the cool down.
Yeah, there are days where I'm like, I don't want to do this for another 10 minutes. But then I'm like, no. What would you tell your clients? What would you tell your students? I would tell them to suck it up and get through it. And even if you have to cut it just a little bit shorter, there are days we're short on time for sure. And sometimes trying to hold yourself to that 10-minute or whatever window it is more stressful. Yeah. So maybe make a concession and, okay, I'm going to go for 5 minutes today. It's still better than 0.
Yeah.
So, you know, kind of think about that in a reward way too.
Totally. Yeah. And the message there is definitely for trainers, like to give your clients that cool down. That could be the best gift you give them, that 5 minutes at the end. I know with some of my like type A, like high achiever clients, making them do that cool down for 5 minutes at the end. And they would want to talk to me and I would say, I just want you to be quiet for 2 minutes. The rest of the day, you're going to be talking to people.
Yeah.
And some of them just couldn't do it. Like they just could not. It would be like 30 seconds in and they'd be like, and I'd be like, and for some of them, it was more stressful than beneficial. So I didn't do it. But some of them were like, boy, that's like the best part of the workout. And I know my mom always says like, she loves what do you do at the end of the yoga? What's it called? Savasana?
Savasana. Yeah.
Like, that's my favorite part. I'm like, you can do that. You can lay on the floor anytime you want.
Yeah. And if you do it right, you kind of fall asleep.
Yeah.
Really good.
That's awesome. So yeah, I think it's important to remember that when we're trying to get motivated, so to speak. And, but the thing I really wanted to talk about today is getting motivated as the practitioner, because there are all these strategies to get motivated. But one thing I think is really important, aside from like these hormones and trying to play, because there's a lot of things you can do to boost hormone, like to facilitate healthier hormones. Like you can, eat better. Like you talked about the gut. So like making sure your gut is clean, making sure you're eating well, making sure you're sleeping, making sure you're enjoying your life. I want to talk about the enjoying of your life, because so as personal trainers, there's like this kind of, and in any profession, there's kind of like this cookie cutter way of doing things. So like for personal trainers, it's generally like you start your day at 6 a.m., you train each client for an hour, XYZ, you meet all these recommendations. But when I wrote my career guide ebook a couple years ago, and when I do coaching with people, I've spent a whole chapter talking about figuring out like what your strengths are as a trainer. So some people would call that like finding a niche, like that could be it. Sure. Like find a niche that you like working with. but also like figuring out what you're really good at as a trainer. Like some trainers are better at like that rah motivation. They like to be up all the time. But some trainers are more like calm people. They're more empathetic. They may be better at like coaching and like supporting people. And then you've got people who are a little more strategic, or they're bigger thinkers, and they're more researchers, and they might be better as a writer or as somebody who's like, you know, working behind the scenes in a company. And so I think as a personal trainer, like you don't have to fit into the mold. Like you don't have to fit into the cookie cutter. The personal training is like the first step. It's, you know, for some people, they get certified. And so I just want to say, as far as like getting motivated, I feel like there's a lot of things you can do to motivate yourself, but the best thing you can do is figure out your niche and figure out like who you are and what your skills are. I think a lot of people take a job and they have to like follow the job description, and it doesn't always work well. I mean, I love NFPT because like over at our headquarters, you know, over the last year or two, we've shifted some roles around to different people depending on what they're interested in or what they're skilled at. And it's nice when a company can do that. And the same thing if you have like a team of trainers. I feel like there's got to be a way to like, you know, you have a team of trainers, one person. Well, actually at my gym, I always like doing the education because I like teaching. So I would run seminars or teach and earn money that way. And so it's like, I just want to tell everyone, like, to get motivated, sometimes you need to dig a little deeper into what you're doing with your day.
For sure. I totally agree with that. And I like your point about the job description. A job description is not meant to be prescriptive, at least from my perspective as someone that has run a department, has supervised individuals, has taught for, 16 years now. It shouldn't be prescriptive. It shouldn't be there to box you in and stifle your creativity. You'll work for some places that do have that mindset. You will. They exist more often than you'd probably realize. But finding out what you're good at and being able to have the freedom to shape that job and bring on new responsibilities, there's your endorphin high right there.
Yeah.
There's your happy hormone surge right there, is being able to, one, be encouraged to find your strengths and what you like, and then in turn being able to morph that into your own niche, or what it is that you do best, and what you can sell your clients. You're not just selling them a workout program. And if you approach it that way, I think it's a little short-sighted. It's a lot short-sighted. It's not a little short-sighted. It's a lot short-sighted. And so finding new ways to raise the bar higher for yourself is important. Yeah. So screw the job description. I mean, yeah, there is a guide, but don't try to like fit into it.
Yeah.
That's my advice.
Yeah, I'm totally with you on that. Preaching to the choir. Let's I haven't looked at the comments yet today. Let's see. Myra says hi. Irene says it's 25 degrees in DC. Burr.
Burr. Yes.
It was 23 here all week, but it was sunny. So I still went for a walk every day, and I didn't even wear a jacket actually, which probably sounds weird, but in fact, my brother-in-law was here from San Diego, and I took him to the airport yesterday, and I threw Isaac in the car without socks on, and he's like, "Wait, what are you doing? You're not gonna put socks on him?" I'm like, "He's good. Like, he's a little guy, and does he look uncomfortable to you? His feet aren't turning blue. I don't know. Maybe I shouldn't be for that, but anyway." Angie says, "Will eating more turkey make me happier?"
Okay, I knew that was gonna come up.
April says, "You may not be able to hug, but you can dish out some compliments. I'm sure that releases some feel goods." I was going to say that too. Like when you work in it, like you were saying, Erin, when you work in a job you like and everything, and when you're doing something you love, you're going to get compliments for it because you're going to do well at it. And I was actually thinking that, April. I'm so glad you said that. I was like, I wonder if oxytocin can come to us from verbal, you know, like the love languages, like whatever your love language is, if that can bring you oxytocin, or if it has to be true skin to skin touch.
Yeah, that's a good question. I don't know.
Surely one of these, maybe like serotonin or something can come.
Yeah, I would think dopamine too, being like your reward center.
So which hormone, I'm curious, like if you're here with us, tell us which hormone you like the most. We talked about serotonin, endorphins, dopamine. and oxytocin. If you have a favorite hormone, I think I have to say oxytocin, because I definitely experienced the power of that this year with breastfeeding, and especially when the breastfeeding was over. Then my son started hugging me. I was like, oh my gosh, what am I going to do without my oxytocin? But then he started hugging me more, and I'm like, oh, this is just so great. Like, yeah. I think, yeah, like you said, children are such a great source of oxytocin. What's your favorite hormone, Erin?
I would agree with you. Like, just, I would say before Olivia was born, I might have said, endorphins, but having experienced that at that level, hands down, there's nothing better than cuddling with your child. And that first moment, absolutely nothing better.
Yeah. And your partner, like, I mean, Carl, I think, told me he read that we're supposed to get 15 hugs a day or something to thrive at a high level. Like, you need 5 a day just to like live. So like he's really cute. He'll be like, hey, like, I need a hug. And I'm like, do longer hugs count for more? But I think that, there's lots of ways to increase our motivation through these hormones. Exercising low intensity and high intensity if it suits you. If the high intensity doesn't suit you, I don't know that it's necessary. So keep that in mind with your clients. High intensity is not always the path to lose weight. It's not always the path to feel better. Sometimes we need to bring it down. In fact, I noticed with myself recently, I don't know if it's just because of where I'm at postpartum, but my weight has just been dropping this last month. Like, it was kind of holding steady for 4 months over the summer, even though I was hiking a lot. Mm-hmm. And I don't know if it's because I'm not doing as much intense exercise or because I'm sleeping more, but I just want to put that out there and remind people that, like, more exercise doesn't always get you to those goals,
sometimes it's just more. More is just more sometimes.
More
and that, back to your question about more turkey. Sometimes more turkey is just more. And not better. Although there is something to be said for enhancing your intake of lean proteins, that will help you produce serotonin because it's going to be derived from tryptophan. But I wouldn't say you need to eat turkey at every meal.
So funny. Myra says that serotonin is her favorite.
That doesn't surprise me given its role in sleep.
I know, Myra.
Yep.
Serotonin for sleep. Well, guys, we're going to wrap it up unless you have anything else you'd like to talk about or share with us.
Or other questions that you want to know about. We can certainly research it.
Hope this was helpful for you. You can always just click that little share button afterwards and send this on to some other people. But I think in recap, do your exercise, take care of your gut, facilitate lower cortisol levels. Go back and watch the cortisol and sleep episodes if you need some motivation. For that. And we're going to roll forward here into the end of the year and the new year with some talk about money. So tune in next week, and we're going to talk a little bit about like end of the year taxes, some money talk. I think we're going to start off next week with just how to keep track in case you don't have you need a good foundation before you can, and why taxes and money are so important, because I always love saying this. I'm such a dork. I wrote a whole chapter in my book about money too, because you can make more money just by keeping better track of your money. So just give yourself a raise this year just by being smarter with money. So join us next week, invite some friends to talk about taxes and money. And if there's any topics you want us to cover in the future, please post those in the comments. And 10 a.m. Mountain Time next week. And what time is that? Noon on the East Coast, 9 a.m. on the West Coast. And thanks for joining us today.
Yep. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.